got more of it than I can remember.
The Muscatine City Council will come to order. Tonight is the in-depth session with 3 presentations, but we'll begin this evening with a roll call. Greg?
Councilmember Spread. Phillips.
Present.
Bynum.
Present.
Shahade.
Present.
Nantvig.
Present.
Fitzgerald.
Present.
Present.
6 present, Your Honor.
Thank you, Greg. Well, first off tonight, a presentation by the Parks and Rec Commission, or I'm sorry, the Parks and Rec Department, Mr. Rich Climbs.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight, we have an opportunity to talk about a new park that we're looking at the corner of 8th and Cedar. Recently, we were approached by the World War II Honor Tour group. 3 ladies approached us, Pam Raymer, Diane Riggin, and Yvonne McConaughey. Came with some money and an idea, a concept. They would like to recognize the different branches of the military in the different wars that have taken place. This coincided with the same time we were given a direction to look at 8th and Cedar to develop that little green space since it's such a well-traveled area. So the 2 projects have kind of come together at the same time. I've given you a picture of what the park site could look like. The Recreation Advisory Commission has seen this and they have endorsed it completely. The committee will raise funds to help with the cost for this site. There will, again, 5 branches of the military will be recognized. There will be pavers put down in place by the park staff. We'll do as much in-house as we can. The site will be leveled, so the drainage will be better than it is now. It'll drain away from the properties to the curb. Public art has an opportunity to have a piece in this area also. So at this time, we're looking for the concurrence from council to proceed with the development of this little pocket park. It be called the Veterans Memorial Park, as a matter of fact. Questions?
Council may remember that we purchased this property as part of the CSO project. We have both water and sewer lines that are going through this. There's not an opportunity to sell this parcel off. We purchased this part of the project. In the short term, we were looking to seed it, put some trees down, maybe bench, and until this opportunity came up. So that was just a quick reminder. But there's a couple questions.
Councilman Bynum.
Rich, what kind of public art? That kind of intrigues me. What kind of things would you leave out in the open? And
Well, I've met with Melanie Alexander, the Art Center Director, and once this is approved and we start our planning process, we'll look at a piece of art that will support the military branches, it'll support the site itself, so it's not overbearing. So that's yet to be determined, but it will have a theme to fit in with the Veterans
talking
Memorial.
about stone or metal or,
That's yet to be decided.
okay.
Something maintenance-friendly, I would suggest, but that's yet
I
to be
was
decided.
just wondering about the maintenance of the property itself. Will that be under your department? And how much will it involve?
I imagine it will be under the Parks and Rec Department, but we're going to maintain it already. It will be a green space at a minimum now, so we'll dress it up, make that entryway look better, maybe even serve as a pathfinding way to the downtown area, to the other parts of town at some point.
Shouldn't be substantially more maintenance than it is now. We're
Shouldn't
already
be.
going to have to mow it and weed, and trim it, which is essentially our responsibility going forward with this park.
It does, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It does look like there'd be more maintenance, the way the picture is here, than the way it is right now. I looked at it today and it's just kind of flat space.
Yeah,
Right, well, there will be a brick path. The brick path will need some maintenance, but I know for a fact that we'll have an Adopt a Park group with this, with the veterans, both with the VFW and the American Legion. They've already approached me wanting to assist and help with this. This is a park that's creating great momentum already and going, and this is the last piece to really step into place and do it. The maintenance, it's a high visibility area. High visibility areas have less vandalism, that's a fact. So I'm not concerned with the monuments, with the things being vandalized. If they are, the groups know that they're responsible for raising funds to help fix those monuments and things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of comments, Rich, here. First of all, I think I love the idea. I'm in full support of this. It's
you.
about time to, I think, to do something like this here for our veterans, and I would like to commend the 3 people who brought up the idea forward. However, over the years, I do believe that during budget session, we complain a little bit about the number of parks, the maintenance, the money we spend on these parks, and at one point, I thought that we're going to find out if we can sell some of these parks that we have. My question to you, wouldn't it be ideal to utilize the park next to American Legion, that it's underutilized right now, to have such thing down there?
Duncan Park you're referring to.
Yes.
We would have to look and see. I don't recall what the stipulations, if any, were. Greg, do you recall with the ownership of Duncan Park? So I don't know if we can sell that.
We're not selling it.
We
I mean,
talk-
to
okay.
move this down there, it's,
Sure.
I'm not saying it's for sale, but it
All
would
right.
be probably appropriate to have it next to the American Legion for such a memorial down there as well, since that Duncan Park is underutilized. I think it make more sense. I think it's close by, and, but I would like to, once again, commend the people who brought this forward. I think we owe it to our veterans. I think it's a great idea. I think it should be, I hope, I would like to see it happen here, but I'm questioning the site of this here compared to the site down by American Legion at Duncan Park. I think it would be more appropriate down there since that park is underutilized.
Okay.
That's my comment.
I can speak to this somewhat, Rich, having some conversation with the individuals. They want, the underlying theme here is they want to thank the community for sending the World War II veterans each one of the tours that took place to Washington DC. And I think there's been 4 total. And they have some funds left over, so they want to do something, and they want to do it in a high-traffic area to say thanks to the community for the support they lent to them in sending these World War II vets to Washington, D.C. I know initially you and I talked about the Riverfront Park, high-traffic area, and then this idea surfaced, and I, for one, think it's a good idea.
Yeah, Rich, I was going to ask if it was competing with anybody else's, but you mentioned the Legion, and what was the second group?
DFW?
BFW, so they're supportive of this location too? I mean, to kind of follow up.
My
from-
understanding is they are. The committee is the one that spoke with them. So my understanding is, yes, they're supportive of
Yeah.
a high visible area that doesn't flood.
Yeah.
That's what they
okay.
would like.
And the other, just a question would be, is the size of this location okay as far as, I mean, there's no expansion of this foreseen? I mean, this will be an adequate space longer term? They must,
I believe it will be. It's a rectangular park site. It's a rectangular grass space that needs an amenity there to dress up that corner. With high visibility, and you put the branches of the military there, if you choose the appropriate size monuments and appropriate size stones, it'll work in that park very easily. If you choose very giant, huge monuments, of course it won't work.
okay, I like the others, I think it's a great concept. I'm driving to Cedar Rapids on the 11th of this week. There was a fire truck on the overpass up there. It had an American flag, a gigantic one, suspended vertically, and it was just the neatest thing to see. So this kind of reminds me of that.
Yep,
So.
exactly.
Phil?
I think it's a wonderful idea for that site. I do want you to keep in mind while you're designing it to keep it low maintenance. The site that Osama was talking about, the city's always kept a hold of that property in case there was a need for turn lanes, something that needed additional something or other streetwise on that corner, which could end up taking part of that corner if you needed to have a turn lane or something. So I think this is a better site for that reason. If I knew for a fact, or we knew for a fact it was never going to be touched, and the purpose for hanging on to Duncan Park over the years wasn't what it is, then yeah, we could move it down there. But I think this is a very good spot, a lot of heavy traffic. I think it's a very good location.
Mark?
Rich, I may have missed this, but if given approval, is there a timetable for doing this?
The group that's approached us is very aggressive and wants to get this done as soon as possible. They would like to get the trail or the walkway in and at least one of the monuments in prior to Veterans Day. They feel a great need to do that because, as they've explained to us, that 1,000 World War II veterans die each day. So they would really, really like to get this done as soon as they could. Not rush it so we lose the quality in developing it, but to get it done as soon as we can.
Okay, and then the public art installation, Is the Art Center involved in this as well, or is this something?
Yes,
that-
I've spoken with Melanie Alexander, the Art Center Director, and after approval tonight, then we'll sit down again and talk about it. There may not be public art right of way. There may be a substantial fundraising needed. That's just a component that could go in that site.
Okay. All right. No, it looks good. I mean, it looks like a nice idea. It looks like it would, spruce up that area.
We believe so. And the commission endorsed it wholly, so they were behind it also.
I just thought of another question. Is there lighting involved with it too then? Like,
Not at this time. Not at this time.
And I think we have everyone's consensus to move forward with the exception of Jeanette and Bob.
I like the idea. I am just wondering, is this a buildable lot? There used to be a sewer that ran right smack across it. Is that still there?
It's, yes.
So you can't build on it at all? Okay. Okay, the park's fine.
Osama's idea about developing Duncan Park really to spruce up that particular corner, which would be right next to the American Legion, I think is an excellent idea. It needs to be explored further, or at least ask the questions of the American Legion and the VFW. What's your opinion of maybe taking Duncan Park before we really make a decision to move to Cedar and 8th?
Have those two options or that other option been discussed at all?
Not to my knowledge, Duncan Park was not discussed. They liked the 8th and Cedar location.
We have one other issue with Duncan Park. It's not consistent issue, well, it is a consistent issue, but it's not constant, I guess. If you're down there at all for the tournament, you would see that corner lot was full of cars parked for the soccer tournament a couple weekends ago. It was packed, along with the street, Kent Stein, and the soccer complex itself. I mean, it is heavily used during those tournaments.
Well, I think one of the three organizers, Pam Raymer, is actually employed at the American Legion there. So if she thought that this was a good idea, Duncan Park, I gotta think she would have mentioned that or
I don't know.
suggested it.
The conversation wasn't had.
I think the consensus is, we think the Memorial Park, whatever it's going to be, it's a good idea, and I think you want consensus on that.
Yeah.
The location of it, I think would be under review.
So, Rich, why don't you do that? Would you go back to those folks and share with them council's concern on location and get back to us?
If that's the desire, council, absolutely.
it would seem like there would be agreeable to that, but we need to kind of confirm that.
I think it makes sense, but.
Anything else, council? Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
And next on the agenda, our new CVB director, Hannah Wilkie, joins us to give us an update.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here this evening. I would just like to start off by introducing myself. I'm not familiar with all of you, but I'm Hannah Wilkie. I'm 22 years old, and I was born and raised in Muscatine, so having a position that publicizes Muscatine is near and dear to my heart. I went to St. Ambrose University for marketing and public relations and graduated in 2012. We had some recent transitions in the past year to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mayor Hopkins established a 21-member board of directors, and it was changed so the CVB no longer worked with the chamber but worked inside of City Hall. So I am located here. And the formula was changed so we could afford to have a full-time position effective July 1st, 2013 at the beginning of the fiscal year. Heather Shopa was previously in this position and resigned on April 5th. Then Janet Morrow served as the interim coordinator from April 15th through July 15th, and I was hired and started July 16th. We had some significant milestones I'd like to share with you that I'm very proud of. We launched a new website. It's visitmuscatine.com. It's an interactive website for visitors to go to if they're planning a trip to Muscatine. It has where you can go, what you can see and do, where to stay and where to eat. And it has all of our events that are going on in the entire county. And I'm keeping it up to date so people will always have fresh information at their fingertips. And we've also launched our new visitor guide, and you each have one in front of you. I've distributed 3,700 since I started 2 months ago. And most of them are locally, but I've gotten out into the community, so they're out in the county. And they're in the Quad Cities, Jackson County, Burlington, Dubuque, and Nauvoo. So they're around Iowa at different welcome ports. So when people come into Iowa and take the trips, hopefully they see that and plan a trip to Muscatine. We have an active marketing committee that's 9 members, and they meet monthly to plan the various ways how we can market ourselves. And we also have a volunteer engagement committee, and we're working with the United Way to get volunteers for our organization. And we post whenever we need volunteers online, then people can go there and see what our needs are, and then go back and track how many hours they've spent volunteering for us. For instance, 2 weekends ago at the big soccer tournament, our volunteers put in 11 hours of work. So that's kind of a neat metric for us to have to see what our volunteers are doing and how long they're spending their time. And my mission right now is to include the entire county Muscatine, not just the city, in all of my efforts. So I've outreached to Nichols, West Liberty, Wilton, and one of the things that I'm really passionate about is getting people to the entire county. So I met with the Hoover Nature Trail people, and I got some great contacts there. Bill Kolner is from West Liberty. He's with the Heritage Foundation, so he's working with me on stuff that's happening in West Liberty. And I met Kyle Gertz, the mayor of Nichols, and he's been working with me on Nichols. And then Duffy DeFrance, she does a lot of different things in the entire county, and she's been a great help to me as well to get our word out there about what we do and how we can help. Is there any questions you have for me?
I do. I will have a couple comments here. First of all, when you see the young talent who've been raised here in Muscatine, they go to college, get educated, get their degree, and come back to the community that where they're born or raised or went to school, it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, and that's, you should be commended for doing here. What are you doing? So you want your community to be a better place. With that being said here, I heard you mention a few things that your goals, what you would like to do in the immediate future here, reach out to the county and some other surrounding area. However, what's your short-term goals and the long-term goals being in this position here for the community? I know you got educated, you're thinking outside the box, you don't want to continue with the old routine that we have here. It hasn't been a great success in the past. However, with the young talent here, such as you here, so what do you think the community should look like with the CVB down the road here in the short term and long term?
For short term, right now, I'm just trying to get our name out there and get people comfortable with who I am and what I'm doing. So then my long-term goals is getting more visitors to the county and bringing in different events and everything. And that way people will know who to go to when they need help planning things. That's what I'm here to do. And I want to get just a lot of people to the county in any way that I can.
Best of luck to you. If you
Thank
need any
you.
help, let us know. Thank you.
And if you will, share, since the development of the website, share some of the numbers, if you can recall, what the visits on the website are on the increase.
Yes, the visits to the website are really increasing. I checked this past Monday, and in our past month, I don't know the exact number, I'm sorry, but we had a little bit over 1,000 new visits to the site. So that's people who are visiting the site for the first time. We had close to 3,000 altogether, and so about 2,000 were repeats. And I can see what terms people are using. And last month, it was watermelons. That was the #1 search term that brought people to our website. And this month, it's the Heritage Day, which is a big Wildcat Den event in 2 weeks. So I think that's kind of neat to see that people are looking to come to Muscatine for those reasons, and they're directed to our website to get the information.
Council, any questions for Hannah?
Anna, you mentioned our new visitor's guide, and you might have noticed the Muscatine looks a little different on the visitor's guide. Could you take a couple moments and talk a little bit about the branding project that we're going to be going into?
So we're trying to brand and just get the image that we want people to have of Muscatine. And Muscatine's the pearl capital of the world and the river. So the S on our guide is the Mississippi River. And that's the image we want people to get of Muscatine.
Anyone else, council?
Mayor, I do have one question. I'll put it on the spot. We have a beautiful riverboat in the Mississippi right now. When can you ride it?
They rent it out privately, so if a business wants to rent it out for an event, they can contact who's in charge of it. They don't do the public events running it at certain times anymore, but they are able to operate it if you request it.
This year, because of the abnormal
Okay.
water conditions at the river deltas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, and next on the agenda, Randy Hill and Company. Randy, we're going to talk about sidewalks.
Well, Mayor, thank you.
Nice tie.
Sidewalks has been an issue that's been before the city council on numerous occasions. I visited with you about it during budget time. We have heard a lot about it during the neighborhood meetings when we were discussing the comp plan. It's very much in the comprehensive plan. It's part of the Blue Zone Initiative. It's all about connectivity. There's a plan coming out in the future as far as pedestrian and bike trails and paths, and a master plan for that. The fact of the matter is that over the years, council, our policy, our program has been on a complaint-driven basis only. We have not had a comprehensive inspection program for over 10 years. And that's because we don't have the manpower to get out there and canvass the entire community to start looking at our current infrastructure. Sidewalks, in staff's opinion, fall into three categories. The first is the existing sidewalks, and with that, we are seeing constant complaints of trippers. We've had examples of that in the downtown area, Central Business District, where tree roots have uprooted, the roots have lifted the sidewalks and have caused tripping problems. And notification yesterday of a lady who fell over on Smalley over a sidewalk. She tripped, hurt herself, probably will be submitting a claim. We have water stop boxes that protrude up in sidewalks. Had an example of that, a complaint this week over in Spinning Wheel Court. Passed it on to Power and Water. They have a process with that. But the water shut-off valves, stop boxes, what I call them, is around town. And we have broken concrete in the existing sidewalk. That's one part of it. The second part of sidewalks are new sidewalks. And you can break this down into two areas. Infill, and Dawson Street is one of these examples where we've talked about, not planning on putting any sidewalks in, but we did get a price from the contractor as to what would it have cost to put in sidewalks on both sides on Dawson, and it's about $39,000. The significance of that is Dawson Street connects Hauser over to West Middle School, and there are no sidewalks in this area. We had an example the other day. The mayor took it and gave it to the traffic committee from a gentleman that lives over in Dillaway and gets out and he walks on Dillaway and Logan, and there are no sidewalks in that area. And I drove over there today just to take a look, and there are none. And so he was wanting to know what he can do to help his own safety as well as the kids that live in the neighborhood. The other thing that we have with new sidewalks, the other area, is the new construction that's occurring. We have not adopted yet, but embraced the complete street policy or complete street concept. And that involves making new roadways, Colorado, Cedar being two very good examples, accessible to all types of traffic, pedestrian as well as vehicular, bike, bus. And we also are planning on, in the near future, moving on Mulberry from basically Palms Drive down to Hauser, and to get that fixed up. We see Lucas in the near future as an area that is going to be needing upgraded. Quite frankly, Councilmember Bynum, when I was thinking about this, I thought about down on Hershey, the reconstruction project. And the new sidewalks we put in down there, that not only went over to the Hauser, but I remember your request to say, can we turn the corner down Hauser and make the connection there, which we did, which was a good idea. So we have that part of it. The other element, or the third part of sidewalks, has to do with a mandate, and it's a mandate from the state and the federal government, I think the American Disability Act, which requires ADA handicap accessibility at all intersections. And so we put in these ramps. They have to be put in as we're doing improvements to a street. So not only can we look at Colorado and Cedar, et cetera, but all the work we're doing on West Hill, for instance, the sidewalks that are going in there, the ramps at the intersections are ADA. Where we can and when we can, we will be doing it with our overlay projects as we can afford to do it. We know that we confronted the state when they were coming in, saying that they want to come in and upgrade Washington Street, Highway 22 from Park Avenue out, and said, are you going to fix up the intersections and make those walks ADA compliant? And they ultimately said yes, they would, with some discussion, but they did, and it's getting done. So ADA is a mandated improvement that we have to make, and these are all elements of a sidewalk program. This past summer, our summer intern that worked with John, her name is Yelka Patoku. Told you I'd mess it up. Patoku, I got it right, Yelka. We called her Yelka. Actually did a study for us on ADA ramps. And it was a very, very good bit of information to have. It showed the potential of what we can do now that the technology is better than it was 10 years ago, as far as documentation of sidewalks, their conditions, and the follow-up and the paperwork that is required to get these into compliance. And in a second, John and Mark are going to get up and give you that presentation. But you need to know, council, that the least expensive way to address sidewalks is not to know. Because if you go out and you inspect them and you find hazards, then we are obligated to make the homeowner fix them up. And if they don't, then we take on that liability. Right now, acting on a complaint-driven basis, we'll go out there and see that it gets fixed up, but those are the only ones that we do. But by taking that kind of a position and using that as our program, I personally do not think that we place pedestrian safety as one of our higher priorities, which I think that we should be thinking about. So with that, John, Mark, why don't you show what Yelka has done regarding the ADA ramps?
So like Randy said, we picked up with trying to look historically what had been done with sidewalks and see what we could do. And this slide is an example of the paperwork that used to be done for inspections. The image on the right is what was prepared for every property that was canvassed through the community. So an inspector went out and he created a sheet for every property in the entire city. And they listed, you know, what was good or bad, and if it was bad, then the letter on the left would go out and they would require repair. Even if there was no repair necessary, they would complete the form and fill it out. And the amount of paperwork and the amount of time that was put into this was just huge. And Ray Childs alluded to that when the Public Works Department was challenged with this, it basically brought the engineering department to a standstill, trying to handle all of the customer complaints and mail and everything with it. So we thought, okay, what could we do here Randy came to you with a budget, hey, let's do something about sidewalks, and the answer was, we don't have a budget for you, John. So what was my answer? Well, let's see if we can't get a start. Let's see what we can do. So we got a few folks together with the intern, myself, and Mark Yarrington from Magic. We brainstormed and came up with what we thought we could accomplish. And so some of our goals were to keep it paperless and easy and make it something that could be shared through the departments and also give us information about our infrastructure. You know, and then when we met, can we do this? Yeah, we found out that we could. And what are the best tools? We found out that an iPad is actually the best tool for the field. I'll send this around here in a moment. But, you know,
I didn't have anything to do
Imagine
with that
that, an
selection.
iPad.
I didn't have anything to do with that selection. John,
Randy
I don't
was
know.
instrumental in helping me obtain that also. And we're not totally there. This is a prototype project that we've got going, but what we're trying to do is collect the information and have it available. And when we're talking about sidewalks, there are two separate components. There are the ADA ramps at the corners, and then there are the public sidewalks that are parallel. The ADA ramps at the corners are the city's responsibility. We repair them, we install them to make them compliant. The parallel sidewalks are the responsibility of the homeowner. The fields on the left and right is an example of what you'd see on the iPad as you go out to the field, and you have the ability to zoom in further. So I'll start this up and I'll send this around so you can have an idea of what we're looking at. And you can just drag your finger across it and it'll pan back and forth and you can look at dots. The green dots are areas that are good, that are compliant. The red ones are locations where the ADA ramps are non-compliant. So what makes an ADA ramp compliant? You have to have a contrasting color panel, you have to have truncated domes, you have to have no curb there, and a reasonable slope on your ramp. And also, ADA ramps are of two types. One we consider a quadrant, and that's where you have the 90-degree arc on the intersection where it encompasses the entire quadrant. The other is a single. We define it as a single so that it's just 4 feet wide or 5 feet and heads toward the curb and terminates. And this matters whether it's a quadrant or a single because we would like to attach costs to this so that we have an idea of what we can afford in a budget if we do go forward to repair. The benefits of the iPad, it tracks and follows you as you go there. There's a little bullseye in the bottom right corner, and if you press the bullseye, the image will actually transfer over and bring you to where you are and show it by a blue dot on the screen. Yilka came from Kosovo. She was an international student. She was not familiar with Muscatine. She would need a map to go navigate. Well, we gave her this, and she's part of the group that came up with our criteria and what we would do. She had no problem navigating through the city and just following where she was at. So it's great to follow where you're at. Also, the red and green dots indicate, you know, the area that you've covered or you have yet to go.
Oh, so you don't have to. I'm supposed to be able
So then how is the data shared? Well, this information, once it's entered on the iPad in the field, it's automatically transferred to the database at Muscatine Power and Water. We had communication chips put in it so that the information can pass freely. So as soon as you enter it, somebody back in the office can actually see that it's there. And there's no wires, there's no cables to hook up and download. Also, it has the ability to take a photo. So when we're out there looking at the sidewalk, we take a picture of the ramp and identify it with that. So you're back in the office, you want to see it, well, you click on the icon there, the red or green dot, and you have the option to look at the photo that you took from the curb there of that intersection. And that's handy in case you want to show somebody, hey, this is what we're talking about. We need to replace this intersection. What are the future uses of the ADA ramp inventory? We can identify the type, whether it's a quadrant or a single, and that helps us with understanding the cost. Where are they and how many are there? We really didn't know how many ramps we had and how much work we had to do. And by using this, we can easily determine, hey, are there a lot of red dots around by the schools? Should we attack those first? And over in the construction areas, hey, even though there might be uncompliant ramps at the West Hill construction area, hey, we aren't going to worry about those right now because in a couple of years, or just currently, they're being repaired. So we can plan to hold off on certain areas and know that they'll be fixed in future projects, but other areas where there's no constructions and it's around schools or major routes, hey, maybe those are the areas that we would focus on. So it's a great planning tool to have at your fingertips. It's also interesting to notice that we looked on 2nd Street and there's a big line of red dots down 2nd Street here in downtown. Well, they're non-compliant. Well, why are they? Well, they don't have the contrasting color. So we were considering, well, maybe we should check into whether they can actually just be stained and be compliant, and it doesn't work. It doesn't cost a whole lot to bring them up to compliance. But, and maybe that's something to look at. And all of this is required because of the ADA requirements, and the state requires that we have a transition plan. And I believe having this type of a system to document what we have gives us a transition plan and allows us to do planning in an appropriate manner. And the ground that Yilka covered, Randy Hill picked up this instrument for me in July, and she started after July 4th, and she left by August 15th. And she covered 70% of the ADA ramps in the entire city in 5 weeks. So it's very easy to use. Per ramp, I went out and did a bunch myself. It actually takes less than a minute to add all of the data and take the pictures and save it and store it and go to the next one. You can do it in about a minute. So it's easy to do. A layperson can be trained to do it. Doesn't require a computer engineer or a techie.
Golf cart might be nice, huh?
Yeah. No, you want to be on your foot.
Well, get from corner to corner.
So the second part, besides ADA ramps, is the sidewalks, and I was going to have Mark present that.
Okay, so what I did to kind of prototype this was we set up 2 different mobile applications for, one for an initial sidewalk inspection. So somebody that's not of authority but wants to scan the whole city first and try to limit the amount of man hours that are spent out there by somebody of authority. And then the other one would be the authoritative inspection. So the authoritative inspection application would just show the features or the sidewalks that were deemed not in compliance by the initial inspection. So the initial inspection would go through the orange ones. The orange sidewalks would be the ones that were not inspected yet. The green would be the compliant ones. So the initial inspection could say, okay, this walk's compliant, it's probably brand new or something like that. And then the red one would be the ones that are deemed non-compliant by the authoritative inspector. And then the authoritative inspector would also, he would see the blue and the purple. So the authoritative inspector would go to the blue ones, he would deem those non-compliant, and they would turn red. And then at that time, there is a button that you can click, and it'll print out the notice for the to be sent out to the person. And then each sidewalk that we have, we broke them all at property boundaries, and so the parcels are all kept on the Magic server, and what you do is you just cut each planimetric line with the parcel boundaries. Because sometimes the property address is not the same as the owner address, so you need to know the owner and the property address. And this would be an example of what the letter to the homeowner would look like. With a single button click in ArcGIS software called ArcMap, it creates the letter and it creates the mailing labels. And then it also sets a notification date inside of the database to 7 days past the date that button was clicked, so that there's time to mail out all of the notifications to the homeowners. And once that notification date is set, then after 30 days, it'll turn those purple, as I was saying earlier, it'll turn those on the or like the authoritative inspector's application, and then he would know that he needs to go do a follow-up inspection after 30 days, or whatever's deemed a valid day period. And then all of the locations are all of the information inside of this letter is generated out of the database. So there's really no interaction or writing down of anything. It's all pulled into the letter based on what is in the database whenever the inspector goes out and inspects it.
So is there a link in that letter that somebody could type into the computer and it would send them to the Magic website and identify the sidewalk in question, whether it's the eastbound, if maybe I've got 200 feet of sidewalk, is it the front one or the side one? Is it gonna identify the problem
Like
issues?
something that we could do, like, a hyperlink of some sort that we could send them to the City Flex site or something like that we always use. It would zoom them right to their property
Right,
based on the URL that they have.
but that wouldn't necessarily identify the issues.
No,
how are
those would be painted, I think is what we were thinking.
That's what they used to do.
They would mark them with, white paint, I'm guessing, is what you usually use for concrete repair. Any other questions?
And, this is a prototype program, so my budget was zero. I wanted to come up with something that we could kick off. Hey, what can we do? What is our infrastructure? How can we get this going? We haven't put this into action, but we thought we would come up with the tools and present them to council, and we think we have a pretty good system started. It needs tweaking, and what we're trying to do is not make it a burden on any department and make this thing as easy as possible. It may not be a department that does this. You may say, hey, we want to hire somebody else to do this. Or there may be volunteers that come forward and say, hey, I can walk the city and do this initial inspection for the ADA ramps or the sidewalks and give the good ones a green light and give the ones that need more inspection to identify those. But what we're doing here is just bringing the tools together and figuring out that, hey, there's an easy way to do this.
Identification of the proper sidewalks in question is easier with the system that you have laid out. The end result is when you do have it tagged or marked, and then someone has to go out and the city has in the past gone out and taken sidewalks out for people, establish grade if necessary, come back and then re-inspect to make sure that the sidewalks are put in according to code. That is time consuming.
I would not disagree with that.
I'm
Gentlemen,
saying we don't need to do it, I just,
Questions for,
I would say it's just another example of how many good applications there are for the MAGIC database. I mean,
yeah.
I want to compliment Mark. He's done all of this technical stuff. Yilka and I and Mark brainstormed about this, but Mark was the one that took the GIS, and I said, hey, is there a way to associate the sidewalks to the property information? He figured out how to do it by breaking up the lines, and then anybody can do it once he's written the program for it. So, yeah, Mark was a great help.
Gentlemen, a couple questions here for you here. The update standards, create a policy, and determine the best way to implement. Currently, we do have a policy for the sidewalk, don't we?
I don't know that we have a policy. I know that we have the authority in the city code to.
How about ordinance?
Pardon me?
Ordinance, we have an ordinance?
An ordinance for sidewalks that are in disrepair.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that-
To fix them up and to bring them up to the code that Phil was talking about, and also in our zoning ordinance for new construction, yeah. But other than that, we don't have anything else.
That's where I'm going with this here, with the exception of the ADA panels here. Are you going to godfather in the existing situation that they have in the residential area? Or are we going to force them to do this? So that's one question. The second question that I would ask here, going through the whole study here, how close are we going to work with the Blue Zone project here, which I think one of their goal is to have it pedestrian-friendly, and I'm sure they're going to come up with some ideas to put some sidewalk, additional sidewalk, or reroute some of the sidewalk. So are we working closely with them as well here, so we don't have to do the work twice? So these are the two questions that I have here.
And I think I can answer both those questions with this one statement. Because we do not have a policy that addresses just the issues that you brought up and how to implement it, that we have nothing, we're sitting here on a complaint-driven basis only. If we get the green light from the city council to move forward with some kind of a sidewalk program, then it's not only the issues you brought up. Council members, I know, I've been through this before with sidewalks. This is not an easy thing. You all have people saying, put it on their side of the street and not on mine. Why do I have to maintain it? Who's going to shovel it? Why do I have to put mine in when on the next street over they don't have any there? Okay, you're going to get one question after a million, and a lot of it's going to come down to money. Who's to pay for it? Who's going to take care of it? Okay, this isn't an easy thing, but it's an important thing. So, with those types of considerations, we need to put together a comprehensive plan that addresses, we'll call the three phases: the existing, the new, and the ADA. And with that, how do we implement that policy? How do we, and that includes funding, working with the blue zones. I forget your first question, but I'm sure it addresses that too. And the thing is, all these things need to be taken into consideration, and we need to bring it back to you so you can take a look at it, review it, and say, okay, yes, no, do we grandfather, got it, do we grandfather things in or not? How do we go about doing this? You know, one of the questions, and we come back to Blue Zone, is the push now is for 5-foot wide sidewalks. And that makes a lot of sense. A question that I asked Dan Burden was, okay, so we go out to an existing area, we go to Phil's place, and he has a slab that is a tripper. That's settled over the years. Now, do I make him go back and put in a 5-foot wide section when the rest of it's 4 feet or not? Probably the answer is no, for it should be aesthetically correct all the way through. But it gets down to those types of questions. But it gets down to subdivisions, new subdivisions. When are they going to connect all these with sidewalks? How long do you have to wait before sidewalks go in a new subdivision? Do you wait till all the homes are built or not? At what point do you do this? I think we have to address schools and kids walking to schools. And where's our priority there? So, and I don't have the answers to those questions, Osama, but I think that is why we're here tonight, is to say, here are your options. We can keep on going the way we are, and that is an option. And if that's the case, fine, because we have 1,000 other things to do. 2, we've talked about contracting this out in the past. You know, I think we had $30,000 in John's budget last year, and we took it out. But just contracting it out to a private firm, that's a consultation, and that is not a one-time cost. It is on and on and on, because they're not going to take care of it all in 1 year, not even close. We can look at staffing and bringing somebody on to help us get this not only underway, but to stay on top of it, using the current technology that's available. Phil alluded to the fact, the way it's been in the past, and how it gets time-consuming. One of the issues that we have found is that people say, okay, I have a bad stretch of sidewalk, I'll put it in, you know, I'll take care of it. And they go out there and they do a miserable job. And then you go out there and say, no, it doesn't meet the city code, the city requirements, tear it out. Now listen to them. You'll hear from them, you know, after they let me know how they feel about it. So these are issues that have to be addressed. And if we want to move forward with this, then I need to know, Greg needs to know, and I've been talking about this quite a bit, where do you want us to go with it? And that's where we are.
I'm just going to add to that real quick, too. We are already working hand in hand with the Blue Zone folks. You know, Andrew's working with them, I'm working with them, Randy's working with them. We met again yesterday with Dan Burden for an hour and a half at Public Works to talk about walkability, connectivity, sidewalks. It was mentioned earlier over at the University of Iowa Sustainability meeting tonight, you know, we had over 40 public meetings with the comprehensive plan process, including council meetings here. Sidewalks was probably it was in the top 3 or 4 items that the public wanted addressed as part of that entire program. We'll be working with the University of Iowa Sustainability Program. There's several of us that are on committees there as well. There's several public folks and business folks that are involved in that. They have folks working on connectivity within the city as well. So it needs to be the city, it needs to be the University of Iowa program, it needs to be the Blue Zone program. It's that public-private partnership that has driven a lot of the improvements here in Muscatine. But, you know, Randy mentioned it, you know, we can keep the status quo, we can keep doing a complaint-based program, or we can look forward in doing a comprehensive sidewalk program, but it's not going to be a one-year program. It's going to be a continuous program. It's going to be something that we do on an annual basis. And you know, you can see on here, and there's some additional information on staffing, and we think how to pay for it, and how to bring it forward, and some ideas where that individual can work on this sidewalk program in conjunction with all of us, with staff, with Blue Zones, with the University of Iowa. But there's other things they can do. You know, we have ways to pay for that. You know, with each of our projects. This last year we spent over $15,000 in acquiring easements and property for construction projects. That's something that a person like this can handle in-house. Steve mentioned the other day we have an opportunity with the airport. For example, we do airport inspections. Well, why not try and do that in-house rather than letting that out? We'd like to see John be able to do more engineering. Randy and John and each of the departments put together a list of capital projects that need some design work. We're not talking a Cedar Street or a Colorado Street, but projects that need to get done within the city of Muscatine. How many did you have on that list?
No, you know, it's a lot, but I mean, things as which is just acted on the harbor dredge. We're talking about a trail project. We're talking about ramps down at Grandview and Warren, in Oregon. And that's John's September list, you know, and I have an October list that he and I are going to sit down and talk about, okay? And man, plus he has the follow-up on the Cedar Street project and some of the other projects. And I need his consultation when it comes to looking at engineering firms. I know that John is meeting with a group, the Levy Commission, the Levy District, representatives from the South End businesses to talk more about the levy as a result of the breach levy study that we did. And he's going to be involved in that because he was involved with Klinger, was the engineering firm that came up and did the study for us to get it certified. Those are the kinds of things that take up John's time, a lot of time. He does not have time to do sidewalks. I mean, he just doesn't. And it's that simple. You know, Mark, saying nod in your head, but you know the work that we're going to be doing over there by Blackwell Mansion, okay? And so what we did is we decided to address the sidewalks and the ramps and those alleys while we're taking care of that whole thing. Another example, you know, and so there's one after another. But it certainly was not planned. But I have to say that it is very, I don't know, coincidental or whatever. That just this week, you know, I've had like 3 different sidewalk issues that have come up. And last night, I'm at a risk management meeting, and a person that's a part of that lives in the community, lives over on Dawson. Says, yeah, they're going great guns over on Dawson. Why aren't they putting in sidewalks over there? And I said, well, you know, we talked about that. And he said, well, at least on one side. And I said, your side? Well, so, you know. So, I mean, it's that issue, people. But at least the question comes up. And you know, I've talked with you a lot about it, Greg's talked with you a lot about it, and I don't want to be any more repetitious than what I have been. I just need to find out, do you want me to do anything about it or not?
Randy, did I understand John to say that we're actually required to have a plan of some sort?
I think there's a transition plan for the ADA ramps, right?
Yeah, by us keeping track of them and making a plan to address it, that constitutes our plan. There is no deadline that says every ramp has to be fixed by 2024 or 5 or 6. But each community is tasked with having a sidewalk transition plan that outlines how are you bringing your system up to compliance.
So that's strictly ADA, not the width or...
Right.
Ramps.
So, we can do a couple things. We can wait, we can bring this back at budget time and work with Bi-State in between now and then on a policy, and then look to begin in July of 2014. Or we can look to bring a program back and get things started, and there's a lot of work that we can get going between now and then. I'm sorry?
As you survey each area, which it was mentioned earlier, like Dawson Street, we know the cost is going to be $39,000.
For Dawson.
Huh?
For
For Dawson
Dawson, yeah.
alone, yeah. So as you survey area by area, is there any method you can get what the cost is for that certain area here that?
Well, you know, John can give us a cost based on our prior year's construction, so we can figure out exactly, that cost we got as an estimate from the contractor on the project. You know, we talked about, Randy and I talked about having an approved contractors list, or even going out like we do with the city contractor and having somebody that's ready to go on sidewalks. That'd be a part of our program. So, you know, if you've got a sidewalk and it needs replaced, you can go find somebody else, you know, whoever you want to work with, as long as you meet city specs, or you can we've got a city contractor, a pre-approved list. Here you go. You know they're going to do it right. It's ready to go, but it's going to depend on what exactly that policy says and who's responsible to pay for it. We'll have to bring back to at a later date and talk about who's paying for it, you know, what the requirements are. We'll bring all of that back with you. We're going to work with Bi-State. We've talked to Bi-State. They're willing to help us out here as well with the policy. They've worked with communities on sidewalk policies before, so we're going to bring them in. Bi-State was there tonight with the University of Iowa Sustainability Program. It's a partnership. But I guess we need to know, one, do you want us to move forward? Do you want to stay as is with a complaint-based process, or do we move forward? If we do move forward, do we start now, or do we wait and bring it back next year?
And we weren't necessarily asking or looking for an answer tonight. I will tell you my preference is that we move forward now so that during the budget session, I can bring back to you a plan. And it'll address the questions that you asked, Osama, because with what Greg, he explained it the way I would have. And to take it a step further, you know, now you start prioritizing. Where do you do it? Where do you put your money first? You know, are there cut-throughs, get you to school? What's going to be best? Where do we infill first? How can it be done? And then we're in a better position if we have a plan to show you, to start looking at what those costs are going to be and how to phase it in, how to go about doing it. So my preference would be, let's get started on it now. You know, if we want to wait till next June, July 1st, okay, you know, we're just putting things back a year. But if that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
We think we've come up with a way to pay for it. And, you know, if we move in that direction, I'd certainly suggest that, you know, we take a look at it and make sure that it's working and that it is, you know, that it's working out as we expected. We need to do an annual review like we do with a lot of our programs. You know, so if we do move forward, we do get this going, we'd want to make sure that we bring it back and say, here, it's been a success, or no, we need to tweak it, or, you know, we need to do something completely different.
My problem is not spending the money on staffing. My problem is that we have, number one, a Dawson Street project that does not have and was not designed to have sidewalks associated with it, when I honestly thought, and I know Randy told me, he said, well, you didn't put that in the budget, but I thought since it was a larger scale project, that sidewalks would be included, just like Colorado and of course Cedar Street has a trail. I thought it was going to be included. I didn't. I was out to lunch, evidently. I want to see something happen with this because I think we do have a liability, a major liability laying there waiting to get us eventually. It's like that sleeping dog. Sooner or later, he's going to wake up and bite you in the butt. And I think we're getting phone calls with the help of Magic, aerial views. You can identify where there are sidewalks missing and so forth. But the key point is, who's going to pay to put the sidewalk in? At $39,000, how many, what they consider block faces, is that 6 or is that 2 on Dawson? Or 2, excuse me.
800 some feet, so it's 2 blocks.
So it'd be like four faces.
Blocks.
Block face, yeah, okay. So we're talking a lot of money.
And you can see in the paperwork, we're not recommending we move forward right now. We're recommending that we put the policy together so that we can start treating people consistently going forward, whether it's us, whether it's the city paying for it, whether it's a combination, whether it's assessed, whatever it is, that we treat people, you know, consistent going forward on that sidewalk program. So let's get the policy done first, and then be able to move forward.
I can't see any problem in going ahead with formulating the policy. I really can't.
Randy, just for informational purposes, our current policy is the complaint-driven. Somebody calls, complains, says, okay, there's a bad section of sidewalk in front of Greg's house. So we send out the code enforcement officer, and he goes out and says, okay, that's right, marks it with an X. Is that right?
What we would, okay, what we would do, would send John out. He's the only one we have, okay? Or perhaps somebody with roadway maintenance and John, but John would be involved with
The
that.
code says that the sidewalk correction shall be made at the direction of the engineer.
Okay, but you established
So
that,
do you go out and mark it then?
I either do it myself or look at it or have somebody else do it.
you establish it's a bad section, and so we say, okay, owner, you've got to replace this section of sidewalk. What's a ballpark cost estimate for that person to replace that.
And, you know, if we're just talking about a slab, what, a 4x4 slab,
Yeah.
something like that? What?
The unit prices for long stretches of sidewalks are between $4.50, or around $4.50 or $5 a square foot. But if you get small patches, it's gonna be a lot more expensive because of the mobilization for that. So it's difficult to give you a straight answer as just to how much a small job would be for 3 or 4 panels.
But we don't want, necessarily want the property owner going out there and doing it themselves, or somebody that doesn't have the experience to doing it. If you go look at Sycamore and 7th or 8th
Tenth.
Street, there's a
10th and
really good
Sycamore, that was put in
example.
by a utility company, but that
Well,
was.
we've had a city contractor go out and do this before, I'm sure, so,
Exactly, and what we would probably do with it, Mark, is if we get several to help bring the price down, so the contractor can get a bunch of these. It goes back to what Greg was saying. So we have a contract with a contractor that addresses sidewalks, new and replacement. And a lot of those situations, to keep the cost down, we do go out and remove it
yeah,
free.
right.
And so it is cheaper for the property owner to piggyback on several replacements than it is for us just to send a contractor, city contractor out to just do that 4x4 square, just for the reason that John said, for the mobilization reason.
And that price is tacked on to it's billed to the property owner, and if they don't pay that. it's
Right, it
tacked on
gets
to the property
assessed.
taxes.
But I guess what I'm looking for is just a ballpark number, what that assessment is if they do 1 or 2,
Square foot?
you know.
But use $5 a square foot.
$20 a lineal foot.
It's gonna double your price if you're a small panel, or triple, the cost to mold, the contractor's not gonna show up for less than $100.
Right.
And a cement truck's not gonna show up for less than $100, no matter whether he's doing 1 panel or 10.
At the same time, property owner's responsible for that sidewalk, and somebody falls and they get hurt and they turn around and they sue that property owner for not properly maintaining it, it's gonna cost them more than $100.
So we can bring this back next week, we can bring it back the first meeting in October, so that we can get some action from the council. Council can give us some direction on how to proceed. If that works for you, you can digest this. If you have other questions, you can certainly get a hold of us, and we can answer those questions, make sure that you get those answers for that meeting. Anything else to add?
No, I think that we talked about when you have full council back to discuss it further, if so choose. We're looking at the October 3rd meeting, I think, if that's what you want to bring back. I guess a request to move forward with the staffing to get a sidewalk program underway. So, is that correct then, Greg? Is that?
Well, if that works for council, it gives you time to take a look at this, ask questions, give us your input, make sure that we include those answers in the packet, or certainly we can always ask questions that night too.
Well, in this outline here, it needs a little bit more as far as, I mean, it gives us a sense of where you're headed, but it needs some work itself. Just-
We're not ready to bring policy back, don't get me wrong. We're looking forward to get started. I mean, it's gonna take a
okay.
while to put together the policy.
Preparing the policy, okay.
Prepare the policy.
You do one
and
of
work
two
with
things.
FISTEP.
You create a policy, or you continue on an accident-as-needed basis.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Okay.
So let's survey the council. Would you like to move forward? Continue as it has been?
I'd like to think about it.
That's what our plan is, bring it back to council, let you think about it, take a look at it, digest it, think of
Okay.
any questions you have, and bring back for action. Obviously, there's no action tonight.
Any other questions for Randy or John?
Hey, thanks, council. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, council, any comments over and above what we've already heard?
I just have one. It's ironic that Mark picked out Greg's sidewalk that he doesn't have and was never required to have a sidewalk in a developed area within this corporate city limits of Muscatine, as there are other areas of this community that were developed without sidewalks. And part of this policy could be, I don't want phone calls, could be that we're going to go into areas that were developed without sidewalks and say, now we're going to put a sidewalk in at the cost of the homeowner and the repair of the
That
home
would
by
be
the
two of
homeowner.
us
And
at this table.
That'd be 3.
I'll take sewer too, while you're at it.
Well, it probably gets close. You can pay to have it taken up there, can't you?
Anyone else, council?
Agreement?
Is there a meeting to adjourn, or a motion to adjourn?
So far.
Meeting is adjourned.